Hi, I'm Sheina,
I'm Andrei.
and we're the folks behind Hocus, Manila.
In this video, we'll show you how to screen print. We'll start with how to process a screen, how to get what your equipments are. We'll show you how to do an exposure, and then once we have a good stencil, we'll show you our setup in printing a t-shirt and also our setup in printing posters.
We've got our silk screen frame, of course, which you can buy ready-made. You can also opt to stretch your own screens, but you can buy them ready-made at screen printing supply shops. You're going to need some ink, either textile ink or ink specifically for paper and other substrates. Some cleaning materials like a sponge, a dry rag. You'll also need squeegees. Squeegees you can also buy at the screen printing supply shops or bookstores. You have a spray bottle, also to help with cleaning and exposure, which you'll see later. Spatula and old plastic card or cut up pieces of card just to help move the ink around. Screen preparation. You're going to want to tape your screens inside the screen and then on the other side. This is going to help a lot in keeping the screen clean, and it'll help it dry faster since there's a lot of cleaning up and washing of the screen involved in screen printing. Okay, next thing you're going to want to do with the screen is you're going to want to wash the screen. So when you get it and you handle it, there's going to be some grease, some dirt, dust. So what you're going to want to do is just get a clean sponge, wash it with some dishwashing soap, and rinse it well. For this demo, we're using our portable setup, but please do use a sink to wash your screen. You can also use a shower or hose it down, especially if you're working with larger screen. Now you don't want to touch the screen itself once it's washed, just dry the edges so it doesn't maybe drip. To speed things up, you can dry your screen in front of a fan. After degreasing the screen, we're now ready to coat the screen with our photo emulsion. We use a one-pot photo emulsion called Aquasol ER. It's light sensitive, meaning it reacts to light, so do work with dim lights, away from direct light, especially sunlight. You'll see here we're applying the emulsion with old plastic cards. You start from the bottom and in one motion going up to the top. Once you reach the top, you want to stop, kind of scoop up the emulsion before you lift it off of the screen. This is so that it doesn't leave a trail of emulsion and get messy. So we coat both sides of the screen. Don't worry so much about the overlapping. May look messy, might look thick, but we will even that out later on. So just check it for any pinholes, any areas where the emulsion doesn't stick. You want to make sure that it gets covered completely. So now we skim off the excess. You're really just lightly shaving off the excess emulsion. And you will slowly see it start to even out. You don't want to take too much time doing this when you're on this step because the emulsion is like glue. So as it dries, it gets sticky and it will be hard to work with. We skim both sides again, just so we get a thin and even coating on the screen.
When you're done coating the screen, we need to let it dry. Just wipe the edges of the screen before you put it away so that they don't drip back onto the screen itself. Lay the screen down to dry with the flat side facing up. It needs to dry in a dark place, so you can use a box or if you have an empty cabinet, as long as there's no light. While the screen dries, let's talk about the positive. The positive is your artwork or design that will be exposed on the coated screen. The positive needs to be flat since our screen will go on top of it, and if it's printed or hand-drawn, it has to be printed in black and white only, no grays. So you'll see the example printed on acetate or tracing paper. It's important that the design can block out light. You can also try using cutouts and other flat objects for texture. You can lay them directly onto the exposure unit. When the coated screen is dry, we're ready to expose or what we call burn our design onto the screen. Again, we need to dim the lights so our screen does not get exposed yet. We have the positive on our light box, right side up. So if it had words, you should be able to read it. The screen goes on top of the positive. We have a few extra steps to make sure the screen has complete contact with the positive. We put a cloth on top of it. And on top of the cloth, we have a piece of wood, or you can use a book or stack of books to weigh it down so that the positive has complete contact with the screen and glass. We use a big jar full of water, so that's how much weight you can put. You set your timer at about 2 minutes 15 seconds, switch on the light, and wait for the alarm. While it's exposing, we'll talk about the exposure unit a bit, or our light box. This is just our portable unit. It fits about letter size designs or artworks. We use 65 lights that are daylight, so these are the white lights. Don't get the warm light, you need white light. We have glass that's about 1/4 inch thick, and make sure it's sanded around edges. And there's a wooden base with very simple construction just to hold the lights and to hold up the glass. So once time is up, just switch off the light, carefully remove all the layers. So immediately after exposure, we need to wash out the screen. We have to just pour water over it first. We're using our portable setup. We just have a plastic basin. So for you, you can use a sink, go to the bathroom, use the shower, or hose it down. You just want to be able to wet the screen. But this part is really where the magic happens. You can start to see the image appearing on your screen once the water hits it. And you'll notice that all the black parts of your positive is what will wash out, and all the clear parts have cured. The emulsion has cured and has become water resistant. All the parts on your design that were black or opaque blocked out the light, so that those parts of the screen with emulsion did not cure. And now we are able to wash it out with just water. You can see that we're just using a spray bottle, a handheld spray bottle here, since we're just using a small screen. And this allows us a little more control. You can adjust the spray. You might have noticed a while ago, Andrei was using a sponge to gently rub the screen. So not all printers will do that or recommend it, but it's a trick that works for us just to help loosen the emulsion a little bit. And it makes it just a little bit easier to spray it out and clear out the screen and the stencil. There are times when parts of the screen that you don't want to wash out will wash out. That means it's underexposed. If it's overexposed, you're gonna have a really hard time washing out the screen. Maybe some parts won't even wash out. So you just want to keep on spraying until the whole design has appeared and looks clear, looks like a clear stencil. You can also use a hose, the adjustable nozzle, like the garden hose. That'll make washout a bit faster, especially if you're using a larger screen. Watch out for the corners and very fine lines. And when it looks okay, we just let it air dry again. So, ta-da! Your finished photographic stencil. Preparing your print station. Okay, so we'll start with some of the cleaning materials. We have a plastic basin. You might want to have a small pail of water. We have a pitcher of water here and a sponge. So that's for quick cleanup, spot cleanups on the screen. If you spill some ink, get some on your hands, that'll be handy. And dry rag. You have your squeegee and a piece of wood or anything that you can rest the squeegee on, park it when you're not using it, and then you have your screen. You also want to make sure, double check that your squeegee is the right size, that it's wider than your design, so that we can print it in one pass. We won't have any overlaps. And again, we use a roll of tape as a place to rest our screen when it's not in use. So basically, you just want to have all your materials near you at hand, make sure everything has its place, because when you start printing, you can't really take long breaks in between prints, or else you'll have to stop and kind of clean the screen. So we've prepared our shirts in one pile. Not shown in the picture, we also have inks on another table just to keep everything clean. We usually use foam boards that fit inside the shirt when we print, but if you're at home, use what you have. Thick cardboard, book, anything nice and flat to raise the front of the shirt or wherever you're printing, or the back, raise it up from the seams. Just kind of check placement of the screen, of the design on your shirt, where you want to place it. You want to do this prep for all your shirts if you can, or put it on a few so that you can do some continuous printing. You won't have to stop, reload. It helps if you have a buddy, kind of like a partner system here. Someone will prep the shirts and then load them for you, and then you have a printer. All right, so everything's ready to print. Mark where you want your print to go. You can use physical marks, use tape where your shirt will go, make a mark where your screen will go. Here we're just gonna eyeball it. We're just printing a few shirts. Gonna center it. We have our textile ink. When you're printing on fabric, use textile ink. We use water-based inks, so that means they can be washed with water. It's not water soluble. It's not gonna wash away when you wash your shirt. It will be permanent once it's dry on the fabric. So you wanna put enough ink to fit the width of your design, maybe a little wider, maybe as wide as the squeegee that you'll be using. So we have our squeegee, kind of dip it in the ink first, get it to slide across. With pressure, you want to move across, and then again push down with pressure. Make sure the ink really pushes through the stencil. And might be a little bit of trial and error depending on your fabric. You might have to go 2 passes, might have to go 3 or 4 passes. All right, and then have a place to dry your shirts. Again, we're gonna push up, and then make sure you're also adding pressure. You can feel the shirt. You can go about 2 or 3 passes, maybe even 4 if it's a thick material. Rip the screen, and you've got another print. Make sure your hands are clean. You do a little quick check on your fingertips, make sure there's no ink. Put it aside to dry or hang it to dry. Again, if you have a friend that can help you out in this part, even better. All right, so we have another important step, cleanup. After you print, start with the screen, get all the excess ink, scoop it up. You can use your old plastic card or old cut up cards. Scoop up the ink. If it's still good, put it back in the tub. If it feels like it might be a bit too thick or dirty, you might have to discard it. Don't forget, you also have to get the excess ink off the squeegee. So we need to keep things clean so that we're able to reuse it. So the screens, the stencil that you have on your screen, it can be used over and over as long as you keep it clean. You don't want the ink to clog up the screen and dry. We're just using water now. Just use a clean sponge, wipe down the ink, wet it, spray it if you have to, so that you've seen all the ink clear up and clear out of the stencil. You just dry it, wipe it down with a dry rag. Again, if you're gonna do this at home, you can do this outside, hose it down, or wash it in a sink. Just make sure you clean the sink right away after, because the ink might stick there. Let's print on paper this time. We have a different setup with paper. You'll see that we have hinge clamps there at the top of the screen. Sometimes they're called jiffy clamps. And we have a hard surface to print on. We put it on a separate piece of wood so that we can screw the hinge clamps in. It's basically a clamp with a hinge, so we can lift the screen up and down. It stays in a fixed position, and we can print several posters all in the same place. Right now, Andrei is just registering the positive with the screen, and this will help us get the print in the right place. You just want to match the positive to the screen. Make sure all the black parts fill up the clear parts on your screen. And you need to press down on the screen once in a while just to see if it's really matching up, since there's a gap. Once you've matched your positive with the screen, gently lift the screen up. You want to be careful so that the positive doesn't move. Hold it down with your hand or have something heavy to place on top of it. And have tape ready also to tape it down so that it doesn't shift. Tape one side because we'll be lifting it up later on. Then when you bring the screen back down, just do a quick check that it still matches the positive. Now you can see here, this is the part where we put the paper and we can just place it where we want the print to go. The positive is now telling us where the print will land. And if you had wanted the print to go all the way to the left, you just fix your paper to the left. If you needed it in the corner, put it in the corner. Once it's in place, we're just going to center it for now. Again, hold the paper down. And we use masking tape. You can use pieces of card that are at least the same thickness as your substrate. So for this one, we'll mark the corners of the paper, I think bits of the edge. So you want to be able to mark at least 3 sides, corner and the edges. That way we know where to put the paper each time we print. Once you've marked the table and where your paper will go, you can already remove the positive that's taped there. Okay, for this print we'll be using Speedball water-based screen printing ink for paper. We also sometimes use Permaprint. These are imported inks. Using the spatula, just scoop up the ink, put it down across the screen. Make sure it's not touching the open areas of your stencil. You just want it on the emulsion part. And you want it as wide or a little wider than your design. You can use your squeegee as a guide on how much ink you need to put. If you have a lot of areas where it's ink heavy, then put a little more ink, and if it's just a lot of text, small lines, then you probably won't need a lot of ink. First stroke is called a flood stroke. You're going to lift the screen off of the table, make sure it's not touching the paper, and you're just kind of loading the screen with ink. You're loading the stencil with ink. Put the screen down, and with pressure, here's your print stroke going down. So for paper, it's only 1 pass, as opposed to textiles, maybe you go 3 or 4 passes. Lift the screen, and you've got your print. Then you can just continue to print as many prints as you can, and that's screen printing for you. Screen printing basics. Hope you learned a lot. Hopefully after this video, you can try screen printing on your own. Show us your work, tag us on your social media accounts. If you have any questions, let us know. You can email us or message us on Instagram and Facebook.